Professor Rosling is also a very active blogger. So if you want to continue the discussion with him after this session, I urge you to ask him and converse with him that way. Our next speaker is also a Renaissance man, Sanjiv Ahuja, the chairman of Orange. He represents, I think this is part of a plot by Nikesh Arora, our host today, to prove to me something I already had believed, which is that brilliant Indian technologists rule the world at the moment. Sanjiv is a member of this group of absolutely fabulously trained Indians. He has a degree in electrical engineering from Delhi University and has gone on to work at a number of technology companies, including IBM. Most recently, he is chairman of Orange. He's going to speak to us about development, technology, and business, and he'll speak for a few minutes, and then we'll have a conversation. Please, Sanjiv.
Thank you, Krista. God, what a setup. I wish I had professors like him. I'd be smart. I was going to say I'd be smarter. I'm not smart yet. So that was wonderful. I will not take very many minutes. You started this conversation saying the other half of the world. I just want to share with us, what is our half of the world we live in? Western Europe, Japan, Korea, North America. 600 million people out of over 6 billion people. This is not the other half of the world, ladies and gentlemen. This is the world. And I think most of our conversations are about 1/10 of the world, not the 9/10 of the world. I want to just share some data with us and then I will not talk about the wonderful examples of Grameen Bank and the success they have had. But I want to share something that was in the recent edition of The Economist. Robert Jensen, a Harvard economist, talked about the local arbitrage in a fish market in a southern state of India called Kerala. Think about a situation where you go out every morning on your fishing boat. If you're lucky, you catch a lot of fish, a lot of sardines that morning. But if you have done well, the odds are other fishermen have done well. So there's an oversupply at the local beach. Prices will be down that day. You may not be able to sell your catch. So what do? You go to the local market and you take your chances. Or you head up the coast and go to another market, and who knows what the situation would be there. You get one chance a day, and the fish has to be sold by dawn. Otherwise, it has to be dumped. And despite the local poverty, 8% of the catch every day was dumped back in the ocean. And then came the mobile phone. I'm a little bit biased towards communications. And fishermen started to call around to get the best price. Waste was eliminated. Consumer prices fell by 4%, and profits rose by 8%. That's the power of communications. You'll talk about 50,000 phone ladies in Bangladesh. In Kenya, where literacy rate is still not very high, there are a bunch of people in the towns that read SMSs for the illiterate people. In Botswana, we used to send SMS messages through the mobile phone reminding people to take their HIV medication. In Cameroon, we were financing, in my old life, and it still continues, mobile phone booths for the entrepreneurs to resell the mobile minutes. GSMA Association, that's an industry association, says that 10% increase in mobile penetration leads to a direct 1.2% increase in annual GDP. So why don't we have communications everywhere in the world? Why don't we have mobile communications everywhere in the world? Why don't we have internet everywhere in the world? Let me just share a couple other data points. 23 countries out of 52 countries in Africa today have less than 10% mobile penetration. 23 countries, ladies and gentlemen. Only 2 billion people in this world out of over 6 billion people have mobile communications today. And just another interesting point, there are 2 countries in the world, in Africa today, that have greater than 10% broadband connectivity. 2 out of 52. That's a big challenge. But if any of this data regarding correlation between GDP growth and communications is even close to right, isn't that a great opportunity for all of us? If we could provide connectivity, if we could have people communicate. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago and I talked about, think of a world where we take the African continent, think of a world where we take 830 million people in India and give them mobile phones. Think of the world where we take 700 million people in China and give them mobile phone. Think of the world where we take billions of people that have never connected and connect them. What transformation this planet would face. And the acceleration chart you walked through from your great-grandma to today would have a vertical rise if we look at it 100 years from now. And I'll just make the last point. We talk about commodities. It's some of us that take interest in a few data that relates to our industry. 1906, there was a cable, the first cable, Marconi created it, first cable that was sent from US State Department to US Embassy in Paris. The speed at that time was 1 bit every 6 seconds. You know the speed that is today. And the cost of transmission of that 1 bit in today's dollars was the US president's salary. Have we seen any other commodity, and we look at the inflation, any other commodity that has had a price drop of this significance? If we can provide food to everybody, we can provide shelter to everybody, and we can try to provide clean water, and we can try to provide health, and we can try to provide education. Why isn't communications a part of that basic staple for life for every man and woman on this planet? Thank you.
Well, thank you very
you.
much, Sanjiv. And now I'll ask him a few questions, which I hope will be the ones on everyone's mind. The first thing that I wanted to ask about was something that Professor Rosling touched on, which is that it's only a small, slightly odd group of people for whom maximizing their own economic welfare is the most important issue when we think about these development issues. But presumably your shareholders do all fall into that category. How much of a commercial opportunity do you see in these development areas that you've been talking about?
Krista, Africa to me and developing markets are one of the biggest opportunities mankind has seen. I'll speak about Orange's presence in Africa. We are seeing a year-over-year revenue growth that is north of 30%. Our margins are some of the highest margins we see anywhere in the world coming out of Africa, and our tariffs are probably the lowest in the world that we see out of Africa. It's a tremendous opportunity. It is a demand that exists, and we as suppliers are not fulfilling it. It is because it is a part of the world we are not comfortable with. I mean, there are a lot of issues, and we can talk about governance.
Why aren't you comfortable? Is corruption a big problem?
Corruption is a problem. Governance at both corporate level, governance with the governments are challenges. But if you set your mind to it, you can get over it. And, we do business in many African countries, and I can tell you, this is some of those of you that are interested. I'm a U.S. citizen, and under full Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, we are fully conformant, and we make it work. I think it's a matter of principle, and it's a matter of committing yourselves to doing it right. And once you do it, opportunities are there. And this is, we'll talk about Africa. There is no formalized distribution of any product and or goods in sub-Saharan Africa. It's a great opportunity. Communications is a wonderful opportunity. 23 countries at less than 10% mobile penetration. 50 countries, less than 10% broadband connectivity. Opportunities like this doesn't exist anywhere else in the world.
Where do you spot, as Professor Rosling has pointed out, there isn't a single Africa, there's huge diversity. Where do you see the greatest opportunity?
I think it's sub-Saharan Africa. If you take Northern Africa, parts of Northern Africa, you take Egypt out, and you take South Africa out, and maybe Algeria and Tunisia. Rest of Africa, although there's big diversity, there's spots. Ghana is one that he talked about. There are few spots. Most of Africa is full of opportunities. Most of India is still full of opportunities. And most of China, outside the coastal China, is great opportunity. And I think that's majority of the world's population.
Is there any place you wouldn't do business?
Right now? No. I think this planet, as human beings, we should do business everywhere. And commerce is the easiest way to cause social.
Uzbekistan? There's no place that's just too...
Let me just, we're going to get into political views here. But the easiest way for us to include every part of the world into the global community is to do commerce with them. Whether it's Cuba or any other regime, I think more we open up our markets, more channels of communication. How did China's transformation happen? Now, this was a long time ago. You start with the trip of Richard Nixon to China. And we started including China as a part of the global community. Now, it's still not a democratic society, and it's still a centralized planning and all of those things. But commerce brings the people a lot more than what might appear on the surface. And I think we have to do that.
What do you think the relationship should be between NGOs and commercial companies like yours in doing things like providing communication to some of the world's poorest people?
NGOs serve a very noble cause. But I think where the need is, and basic economics would tell you, if you serve the consumer's need, people's needs, enterprises' needs, you would make money. And it's profitable. And I think if we start, in some ways, stop looking at doing business in developing markets as a charitable activity to a commercial enterprise that is profitable, and if I may speak for myself, personally, not for Orange, as a private individual, and if those enterprises do something to contribute to the infrastructure, to the healthcare, to education, what all they're doing, it sounds like charity, what all they're doing is they're making sure that their consumers, their customers, today and tomorrow are better able to buy their products and goods and services.
Is there a danger in these kinds of relationships that the very poor consumers are going to be exploited? These are often people who aren't literate, who might not be very numerate.
Krista, I don't believe that. I think this is, and if you look at the long context, and you have to have a macro view to this, if there is a quarter or two or a few years where, quote, the people might be exploited, eventually if there's more education, people will filter out. And Nikesh is not in the audience. Growing up in India in the late 60s, early 70s, we used to read that Indians are going to die of starvation. Okay, this is what every newspaper would say. We had a famine here and a famine there. And by God, there's still 1.2 billion of those floating around in this world. They didn't die of starvation. I think you give the opportunity, people rise up to the occasion. And yes, sometimes it takes longer than we would like to. But I think it behooves us. It's a great economic opportunity for us to get that part of the world included in what we all do.
You have an American passport.
Yes, I do.
Given current hostility towards America in a lot of parts of the world, is that something that you ever experience as a businessman?
I don't think there's hostility towards Americans. At people level, human beings are human beings. And I have never felt hostility towards me, and I have done business and I've been to all parts of the world based on either how I look or what passport I carry. I think if you are fair, straightforward, open-minded, direct with people in any part of the world, people are open-minded and they accept you. So no, I haven't experienced that.
And how about being Indian? Is that a development experience that you see people in other parts of the world are looking to and thinking, well, India has done it, or parts of India have done it. How can our country emulate that?
Krista, this is interesting. I'll bring an example. When I went to the U.S. in late 70s, I started working for IBM. I was probably less than half a dozen people out of 10,000 employees on that site. I was the first manager. I was the first executive of Indian origin. And people would ask me that question. I never felt like that. I said the only time I recognize I'm an Indian, or not like everybody else, is when I look in the mirror or I look on that screen. So I think it's inside you. If you don't feel the difference, it's not there. And no, I haven't felt that in any way.
And how about the positive sides of the Indian experience when you go elsewhere?
Yeah, and it's rather recent. It's a decade old, but the parts of Africa you go there and people say, or even Europe. This is a head of state of a European country took me aside recently and said, let's spend a few hours and let's understand how Europe competes with India and China. That was an interesting conversation to have. People in Africa, this is a question that's often asked, is talk about your personal experiences. And I think, this is, if I could speak on this topic, I think it's a university system, the education system. And India could have done a lot to improve the education system at primary level, high school level, and they haven't done enough even now. But they built world-class universities, and the people that filtered through to those universities are the ones that you know. And I think if the example is to be followed, I'd probably do it slightly different. I would start with the grassroots education and build it up. And then you can't keep talent down. You can't keep skills down.
You're wearing an orange square on your lapel, but I'm going to ask you to be fair-minded in answering this question.
Okay.
What is more important for development for a really poor village? Some mobile phones or buying them a computer and internet access?
I think it's both. Because if you can, through your mobile phone, connect to the internet, then that solves the purpose. Voice communication is fundamental, and I said it's a basic staple of human life in some ways. But being a part of the information society is critical. I mean, this arbitrage that people play by shielding information. I'll give you an example. We talked about Kerala. We used to have this in Cameroon. People didn't know which market to take their products to. The farmers did not know. Until they got mobile phone, they got their commodity prices sent to them through SMS texting. Now just think, we are now a global world. If I could have that information online every day, I know where to take my product to. I know where to take my services to. It's there, it's now. And if we can get a $100 PC in every school on this planet, in every healthcare facility on this planet, in hopefully every household in our lifetime, we have truly transformed the world. And why shouldn't we take that opportunity? It's not out of sight. We could bring mobility to 2 billion people. Let's first take the step. Let's take broadband to the 2 billion households. And I think we have most of the households covered. So I think it's both. I don't think it's either or. I think we need to get both of them out there.
Okay, well, on that very upbeat note, we'll move on to our next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.